Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we are discussing ACLs, high beams, gobos, and we go back to high school yet again on Light Talk.
And this is David in Long Beach, California, back again, yay! And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
Welcome home, David.
Thank you. It's great to be home. And I was just going to start off the show just to tell you a little bit about my drive back, which was just amazing. You know, I've been driving back and forth from Long Beach to Central City for, I don't know, I've been doing it 20 years. I think a few years I flew there and probably rented a car. But most of the time, I'd say at least 15 times, I've actually driven from Long Beach to Central City. And it is one of the most beautiful drives that one could make in the United States. Because you get to see almost everything. You get to see the beach, you get to see the mountains, you get to see the desert, you get to go through Utah, which are amazing canyon countries. Oh, it's like being on another planet.
Can I ask you, have you ever stopped in Moab?
Yes, I've stopped in Moab, I've stopped at the Grand Canyon, and this year it was interesting because I drove my Tesla for the first time out there, which is really interesting because about 90% of the time the car drove itself, which was actually kind of weird, but really relaxing. It was the most relaxing drive I ever taken, but it diverted me off of the I-15 and through Joshua Tree. I'd never been to Joshua Tree before. Cool. So just by accident, I went through Joshua Tree, and it was just unbelievably beautiful. Yeah. I also hit a tumbleweed at 90 miles an hour, but that's a whole nother story. The car did not react fast enough to avoid a tumbleweed. But I just wanted to say that driving through Utah and parts of Arizona, of course, is just spectacular. I stopped at St. George for a charge for my car. It is just, something I mentioned on Facebook. If you were going to start a religion, that's where you'd start.
And especially, Joseph Smith, who had these visions that founded the Mormon religion, saw this beautiful place in Utah, and sure enough, it is. I mean, Zion, Bryce, Arches, it's
Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I must say, we Pam and I have driven most of this country more than once, a lot of miles when we were in our 30s and 40s, and that's the way to see the country. Flying over it, but really we love to drive and see the country, and particularly this country is gorgeous. It really is.
It is, especially that part of the country. So for the listeners who have never done it, I highly recommend it. I-70 down to the 15 and the 15 South. Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful landscape, and it's really liberating, I must say, especially when you're driving alone. Although I was with my dog, she was in the back of the car. I was basically alone, and it was really quite lovely, I must say. It was wonderful. And one thing before we get started today is that a few weeks ago, I had asked our listeners to start writing some reviews, because we only had like a handful of reviews. We have a lot of ratings, and we're pretty high in the ratings, but we don't have reviews. Well, people have started writing them. I don't know if that was a good idea.
Uh-oh. No, they're probably telling us how to be better or what they don't like or something.
Actually, they're very good, and we want to thank the listeners who have done that because that's very kind of you. But listen, please, write some reviews. The more reviews, the better. So, hey, enough of that. Let's get on with the show.
Yeah.
Steve has our first question.
All right, we have Ben in Montana, and he writes, I am just a little confused about aircraft landing lights. The lamp says 28 volts and 450 watts. So how do I wire this thing up to use it in 120 volt?
God.
So I have to tell you, I've never seen a 450. I've seen 600s. The ticket with an aircraft landing light or an ACL is that it's a low voltage source. So that 28 volts, you've got three ways you can do it. One way is you can go into the dimmer rack and you can reassign that dimmer to do an output of 28 volts. So you can have one light on. Or you can go down to the hardware store and get yourself a 28 volt step down converter and take that 120 volts down to 28 volts. The normal way that, if there is a normal way, that you see an aircraft landing light used is usually in a group of 4. So if you take 4 and you wire them in series, so that means line in and neutral out, you're going to have, a little over 100 volts there, 112 volts if you wire 4 together. So that gets you around that 120 volt problem. So you wire them in series. The problem with series is it's like a cheap Christmas tree light. If one of the lamps go out, then the other 3 go out also. So that's a little bit of a problem. I mean, the nice thing, if you haven't used an aircraft landing light before, the nice thing is they're super bright, and they put out about a 4-degree beam. I did some research, and it's worth noting, if you have a private airplane, you're probably using a 250-watt ACL, and that's good for about 20,000 lumens.
Yeah.
And that is a focus beam of light for about a quarter to a half a mile.
Wow.
Now, if you're the crown prince of hoo-ha land, and you got your giant 747 or whatever you're flying in, then that aircraft landing light has an LED replacement. And the LED replacement on the commercial airlines, that light puts out, are you ready for this? 700,000 lumens.
Let's get one of those. I want to get one of those.
Oh, my God. Yes,
Can we buy
that's
that?
what I need.
Who was making it, Steve?
I have no idea, but I'm sure they'll sell you all you want if you want them.
I'd like to have just one. I wonder what voltage it runs on. Did it say?
I assume 28 volts.
Huh.
Oh, well, I don't know. That's a bad assumption. It's
Yeah,
an
probably.
LED. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who
that's
knows what
right.
it runs
Yeah.
on? But I would think it would be low voltage, whatever it is. Oh, also, the thing I just want to be clarify here, Ben, before you run out and start wiring your 4 ACLs up, I'm not talking about a forfer. I'm really talking about one line coming in and connecting all the lights, and at the end, that line comes back
Series.
as the neutral. So it's series.
Right.
We had them at Production Arts. We called them Series Forfers.
If you want a pro tip, wire 5 of them together, and you'll get incredible life out of 5 of them wired together. A little bit of step down in voltage makes a big difference in how long they live.
So anyway, let me tell you my little ACL story. It just happened to me. I was working on Billy Budd, which opened on Saturday, by the way, and it was very successful. Apparently, I couldn't go because I had to come home early after final dress because my dog wasn't doing well. I had to get her down to sea level. But we had these 2 cannons that came on stage, and there's a big cannon shot because they're in battle with the French ship, and the director wanted some audience blinders in the cannon. So I originally asked around and found out what they had in stock, and they had some ACLs. So I said, perfect, let's hook up an ACL, let's put it behind this scrim in the cannon, and we'll blast the audience with this light. So they hook it up and they plug it in, and we do a test, and it's this fantastic burst of light. I mean, it was perfect. And I said, that's absolutely perfect. Let's use them. And he said, well, the problem is we burnt the lamp out because they didn't have a transformer.
They ran 120
They
through
just
it?
ran a 120 through, but it was the perfect, I must tell you, for a flash, it worked great. Oh my God. So we ended up getting the smaller ones and putting transformers in them, and they worked pretty well, but not as good as that one overdriven light for that one split second. Susan in Hong Kong says, I just scored a dozen I-beams for my space. What is the best way to hang them? Well,
On a pipe.
Well, not you can put them on the floor, but that's not hanging. That's not hanging. You can stick them up on their ends so that they're like vertical. But I guess we're talking about IntelliBeams. Is that what we're talking about?
That must be.
Okay.
I-beams.
Yeah, I-beams are IntelliBeams, which was an old product that High-End used to make back in the, I guess it was the 80s, 90s. It was one of their first scanners.
Nice light.
Yeah, it's good light, good light. I preferred the Cyber light, but the I-beam was a good light.
Cyber is brighter, yeah.
But yeah, it's a scanner. For people who don't know how scanners are designed, there's a light source that goes through all the lenses and all the optics and of course all the color filters and gobos, and it shoots out the end and hits a mirror. And the mirror actually pans and tilts and redirects the light. And what that means is that just because of the way it's designed is that you do not get 360-degree coverage. And that's, kind of an important thing. Matter of fact, it's relatively limited. I don't know exactly what the degrees are, but it's not over like 230 or 240. So if you hang it in a certain way, there are areas of the stage that you will not be able to hit. So you have to always think about that before you hang the light. For instance, if you're going to use them primarily for backlight, you're going to want to hang the I-beam, or any scanner for that matter, so that the mirror is on the upstage side. And you're probably going to want to tilt it down at an angle, 30 to 45 degrees, so that mirror will reflect the light downstage. Same thing, if you wanted front light, you would hang the I-beam so that the mirror is downstage, so that it will reflect the light upstage. So that's really probably the most important thing when you consider hanging an I-beam, is exactly what configuration the fixture is going to be in. One of the things that I've talked about in the show before is I used to use cyber lights in box booms, which were kind of cool. You wouldn't hang them, you just put them on their base. Make sure you block them up, by the way, because there's a fan down there. You don't want the fan not to be able to vent the light because they're arc lamps. But yeah, you'd block them up on like 2x4s or something like that, and or stage weights, so that there'd be circulation happening. But the light would shoot up at the mirror, and then the mirror would have a great deal of flexibility to be able to shoot onto the stage. So that's another way I used to hang those. How about you guys?
I used them on an industrial once, and we really had a very hazy space, and we loved them. I mean, I think they were a great light, just big and heavy, but boy, were they great. But I have a funny story about someone told me this. I can't remember who. They were used on a Broadway show in the early days when they were first starting experimenting with moving lights. And you guys will remember this, that the shutter to dim the light is also the same mechanism that creates the strobe. It's just a very fast opening and closing device. And the default position for the strobe is closed. And so if you try to open, say, the intensity, you would open up to full, but you wouldn't see any light. And these stagehands were looking at the light going, well, damn, we can see the lamp is on. It's burning back here. We can see the light leak. And we're turning it up to full, and no light's coming out the front. and the reason was, ultimately, was that the strobe defaulted to its closed position. So the strobe had to be put to open or full, right? And then reconfigured and locked into that. Then you could close it down. So it was sort of an interesting sort of, head scratcher, like, why isn't the light coming out with the intensity full? But I think they were a great light, just big and unwieldy. But boy, for that, I did a thing where we had an award made out of brass and glass that came up out of a podium filled with dry ice fog, and we just backlit that thing with one cyber light at full, zoomed down, iris down, and the beam was just, at the time, no one, it was just so beautiful and so powerful. I love those lights. And the litho patterns that came with them, those beautiful glass gobos that High End made, were also pretty terrific.
I hang them upside down. If I put the mirror at the bottom, that gives me a really good sweep and scan. So mirror at the bottom. But, I mean, ultimately it depends on what you're using it for. I mean, there's no wrong way. You just have to experiment. You might hang them sideways if that gives you the effect you're after.
Exactly. And one other thing, we talked about this before, but the reason why scanners were so popular...
Speed.
That's right. They were fast. That mirror is very light.
Snap.
So, some of my favorite scanners are the Martin PAL 1200.
Do you remember the clay packy, what was it called? Golden Scans?
Yeah, the Golden Scan.
And they had a whole line of them. Yeah.
Like we said, the Cyber Light is a great, great light. Still, to this day, some of the great optics. Really wonderful gobo morphing on the Cyber Light. So, yeah, scanners.
Bring back the scanners. Bring back the scanners.
Well, there are scanners being made again. I mean, Clay Packy has a new scanner.
Daryl in Virginia writes, I am stumped. I cannot get my gobo to focus to a nice, clean, sharp edge. Any suggestions? Well, I have a couple. I don't know what kind of fixture he's using. So back in the old days, that was often a problem because the optics weren't what they were today. So we used a donut, which was like a color frame with a hole only about 3 inches in diameter that we would put in, and it would cut out all that halation or chromatic aberration you would get in those poorly optimized fixtures. and they would sort of increase the sharpness of the edge. The other thing that's not unusual, and even in a Source 4, if the field of the fixture and the alignment of the lamp in your fixture is not, we'd call it bench focused, that can make a difference. That might be part of your problem. And the third thing I thought of, maybe these guys will have some other ideas, is that if the gobo is warped, or for some reason the gobo is not sitting flat on the focal plane, that could have some areas would be sharp and some areas would be soft. So maybe you want to take a look at the gobo and see if it's warping, if it's heating up and warping, but that wants to be on a nice flat plane. Those are the three things that I can think of to help with that situation.
Yeah, well, one of the things I used to do is I used to take the gobo holder out, flip it, and then put it back in again. And that worked about 70% of the time. I mean, it was like, oh, look, it's sharp. And I think it has
hammer the gobo. Make sure it's flat. Make sure it's nice.
We've come a long way from taking nails and tinfoil and punching holes in tinfoil for breakups.
I used to make those. I used to get printer's plate and make my own gobos and so on.
You were fancy. That was much fancier than I did.
I was creative, but I think the focal plane is the issue, and David's suggestion of flipping it around could be but check the fixture alignment. If you don't know how to bench focus a fixture, that's something you might want to find a video on and do that. When I was at Production Arts, every fixture got bench focused every time it came back to the shop before it went out again, so that problem didn't exist.
Yeah, but they were Altman 360Qs, so there's only so far you can go with those. But hey, I think I used a lot more donuts back then than I use now. I mean, it's rare that I cannot get a clean gobo out of a modern light, like a Source 4.
But I'm not a big fan of sharp gobos unless I'm projecting something literal. I like this a beautiful soft edge. That's what I love about moving lights with good optics, is that racking of it's like a beautiful paintbrush. You just decide on what kind of edge you want. It's between something that looks like a cartoon and something that's really artistic and gradiated.
Yeah, but the problem is that if you can't get a clean edge, then when you run that out of focus, which of course I love doing as well, then part of that is going to be where you want it. The other part's going to be too fuzzy, So, if you start off with bad optics, you'll continue to have bad optics no matter what you do. So that's why the optical field is so important in these lights, and that's why, frankly, they're rather expensive. I mean, lights are not cheap. So you're dealing with all those optics. Back about 15, 20 years ago, when Robert Juliot was creating all those amazing fixtures, which to this day they do. There's nothing like it, the optics of those lights, but they are expensive. They are very, very expensive.
You get what you pay for.
That's right.
Well, in case you haven't noticed, you're listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. And this week, Light Talk is sponsored by...
I will never forget my grandfather's last words to me before he passed. Steve, he said, are you holding the ladder? Workplace safety and ladders go hand in hand. That's why Better Than Nothing Industry introduces the latest in ladder technology, the ladder of success. How many times have you said, are you holding the ladder? Well, not anymore. New for 2019, the ladder of success includes the patent-pending Get-A-Grip safety system. With the Get-A-Grip safety system, your helper is harnessed to the ladder. He can't go anywhere. If you and the ladder should take a fall, you are taking your helper with you. That's right. Both of his hands are strapped, bolted, and secured to the ladder of success. Now your ground man has some skin in the game. The ladder of success, proudly made in America by Better Than Nothing Industries.
That's a great idea.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It reminds me of working in Italy, where you have one guy up on the top of a genie and you have 20 guys at the bottom of the genie, and
smoking cigarettes.
No, they're not smoking cigarettes. They're debating, because what happens is that the electrician at the top will say, "Okay, guys, move me stage right," and then you would have a 20-minute discussion and debate on what the best way of moving him, stage right 5 feet. So anyway, okay, so
all right. And now we're going back to Light Talk.
So the sound of those frustrated ducks tells us that once again it's time for our Let's Talk About segment. Today we have a surprise. As you all know, a few weeks ago Stan visited Copenhagen and Amsterdam and was in search for a Light Talk listener for a quick interview. Well, he found one at the most unexpected location, at the local laundromat. So he whipped out.
You have to keep your clothes clean.
I know, you got to keep that clothes clean. So he whipped out his iPhone and recorded a few minutes with Light Talk listener Morten Lovechild Kronborg. Did I say that right, Stan?
No, Kornberg.
Kornborg. The Kornberg.
Just say cornbread. Cornbread. Don't say Quanbug. Kornberg. Okay, so he whipped out his iPhone and recorded a few minutes with Light Talk listener Morten Lovechild Kornberg. And here it is.
Hello, this is Stan from Light Talk, and I am standing in Copenhagen right now at the laundromat, if you can believe it or not. You see that sound in the background? That's the dryer. And I am standing here with my friend whose name is...
Hey, I'm Morten. I'm a cinematographer, or so I think it's called. I do video for a living, and I need to wash my clothes because I've been working for 2 weeks now. And here I am meeting Stan. This is what a coincidence.
Unbelievable. I'm standing in the laundromat in downtown Copenhagen, and I meet a videographer, and we start talking about lighting while we're folding our clothes. So we just wanted to bring you a little short clip of Morten and what he does. So you told me that you work internationally. You're in Thailand, you're in Louisiana as well as Denmark.
Yeah, well, when I go to Louisiana, it's mainly for songwriting, but I also do some video there. But mainly I travel around the world. Mainly I'm in Thailand in the winter season, and I'm in Spain, Denmark, and Norway in the summer. And it's really wonderful because the weather is good all year for me, and I get lots of good experiences. But when I'm back here, and right now we're in Denmark, and this is actually where I live, is where I got my address at my parents' house. How cool is that? I'm 38 years old, and I got my address at my parents' house because I travel so much.
He's an artistic vagabond.
Yeah, very, very. But it's a lovely life. It's a feeling of freedom. But what I do here, the next week I'm gonna record a short film for the Danish Film Acting Academy. And I'm going to be the cinematographer in that, and we have a really cool director coming in, and we're shooting tomorrow. So I got my van packed up with all my Kino flows, with all my...
Tell us about the lighting. What kind of lighting gear do you use?
When I travel, I have like small LED lights, and I bring either umbrellas or a softbox, like a very compact softbox that can fit into my hand luggage. And I have 2 LED lights, and I can get pretty far with that. Of course, you can see the difference between like having real professional gear, but mainly I do lots of commercial stuff, like stuff for social media. It could be like an underwear brand, you know, and so you can mix it up with natural light, and then you have these extra small LED lights that goes into your hand luggage. It's very easy to travel with, and it doesn't weigh much, and it goes a lot of hours on the battery. And it's a good basic setup. But whenever I'm doing a bigger production, I would contact some place and rent proper gear for the job, of course. And it's a variety of jobs. You never know what the next job is, what kind of gear you need. So I think after a couple of years of video making, you will know what you need as basic stuff.
How did you get into this? Did you start out as an actor, or?
Oh, that's a really funny thing you're asking about it. I come from the music business. I was the guitar player, and I was the songwriter.
Oh, nice.
And we were performing on TV in front of 350 million people. It's like the biggest show they ever had in South America, and it was really wonderful. But then after that, I was still not making any money. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of good experiences, but I wasn't making any money. And after 10 years of doing that, and it was like I was on this big stage, and we had 2 weeks in Chile, and they just treated us like pop stars, and it was wonderful. And I decided to just stop at the top,
Yeah, that's
so
no one to fold them.
Yeah, and it was a really good decision. And then I started recording stuff when we were out performing, I started recording stuff on my phone, a little handy cam. And after that, when I stopped my own career, I started tour managing artists. So then I started recording the artists that I was traveling with as a tour manager, and I would just put it together in iMovie and make.
So that's how you built the editing skills to do what you do now.
That basically, I started out with iMovie, and the artists were pretty happy about having some content. But yeah, you asked me how did I get into this business? That was how I started, because I just started learning by doing, and then people started contacting me. Hey, do you want to do my music video? And I got a lot of contacts within the music industry, so I still do a lot of music videos.
Nice. Are there any music videos that you've made that maybe our listeners would know, that they could watch?
Oh, that any of the listeners would know?
Or something that you'd like them to see?
Oh my God, I have no idea if they know any of my music videos. I think the one that has most reach is one from Kurdistan, which is not a real country. It's it's just only 40 million people there, but they don't have their own country.
Kurdistan, right?
Yeah, Kurdistan. It's divided between Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey.
Were you there to make the
No,
video?
we shot it here in Denmark actually, but because the guy lives in London, but he's like the biggest star.
He's a star in Kurdistan.
He's not just a star. He's like the biggest star. His name is Ayub Ali.
Ayub Ali.
Yeah, and it got millions of views on YouTube.
Well, you're gonna have to send us a link.
Yeah, I'll send you a link for that. I think
great.
that it's so funny because it's something like nobody here knows it. Like none of my friends know
the Americans. Surely
nobody
don't
knows.
know it.
No, so I think I shot that with some HMI lights in my studio I had at the time, and I used like a big softbox for it, and it was like, it's just very expensive lights, and it's just everything just looks good when you use that kind of lights. And he was wearing his turban, and yeah, so it was pretty cool, and but quite a new experience for me too, to work with that, because there were so many rules. I couldn't have women in the video. There was like different stuff. It was very interesting, but a very great experience, and he was so humble. And
I think we should.
I'll send you the link. Well,
okay.
Yeah, hey, my clothes is finished.
Yeah,
I need to put it in the dryer now.
We have to pull the clothes out of the laundry now, get them folded up. Everybody's got to go home. Morton's going home to see his mom. Pam and I are going to go back to the hotel and have a nice cafe. And Pam has made a friend from Spain. They've been talking for half an hour here in the laundromat in Copenhagen. Thank you so much for doing this.
It was a pleasure to meet you, Stan.
Same
Pleasure
here.
to meet you.
Okay.
Take care.
So our thanks to Morton, who did a wonderful job on that interview, and you too, Stan, for battling the sounds of the industrial machinery in the background.
It really was a lot of fun, and he was great. And I should say, Morten is going to listen to this episode, and he works all over the world. He's got a base in Denmark. He's oftentimes in
New Orleans,
in Asia, and the U.S., and he works with the artists. So we'll post his website, give him a little free plug in response for doing the short interview, and I hope you all enjoy it.
Great.
Well, there goes his career down the crapper once he gets posted to Light Talk.
Oh my God!
Yeah, you're saying it's a step down for him.
Oh, he can't get any lower than this. So it's good to know, Morton. You can only go up. So Steve has our last question of the day.
Hi, it's David in Michigan. I'm starting to teach this fall at the local high school. I am mostly teaching acting classes, but will be expected to direct and put my shows together. The principal has given me a tour, and I noticed the lighting pipes had numbers and letters on them. The numbers I get, but what is ND?
It's not neutral density.
Well, I suspect. You're talking about the most beloved musician in where? Where was it?
Kurdistan.
I'm the most beloved lighting designer in the Marfa, West Texas area.
Yes, you are.
You are big in Martha.
You are.
So what does ND stand for? It probably stands for non-dim. So you have two types of circuits up there, right? You got a circuit that you can plug a light into. It's on a dimmer. Your control console can control that light. Sometimes theaters put non-dims in. And there's two different ways a non-dim could work. I think the preferred method, and feel free to jump in, guys, I think the preferred method is it's on a relay. So it's a truly on-off switch. The unpreferred, and I'm pretty sure that's what you have since it says ND. The other way is sometimes people will take a dimmer and park it at full and pretend that's a non-dim. That's not a non-dim. The sine wave is off on that, and that's just not a good thing to have. So I would suspect if you've, you've got a light bulb going to your refrigerator on stage, you could plug that into the non-dim. So when they open the refrigerator door, the 25-watt light bulb is on. I would probably get with the district, and I would get some maintenance people out there. I mean, you are, very straightforward about this. You're an acting teacher. I would get someone out there with a little technical expertise to help you through everything those first few days, just to make sure everything is safe and working the way you think it does.
I would just add one thing that Steve said. The relay is the best. I agree. The dimmer parked at full is a problem because the sine wave is still being chopped. And sometimes on more modern systems, they'll actually install a non-dim module in your dimmer rack where a DMX value of 0 will be off and a DMX value of 1 or greater will be on, and there is no SCR chopping the sine wave. So it could be set up that way as well.
Well, I also want to say that this is a really good question because David in Michigan probably studied to be an actor because he teaches most of the acting classes. But as a high school teacher, he is expected to understand and actually probably design and hang lights and everything else. And I bet he was glad that he paid close attention to Stan's Lighting 101 class. I hope so, because otherwise he may burn down the high school. So for people who are thinking about getting into either high school or even and sometimes community college theater departments and sometimes university theater departments, an acting class is not enough. You really need to be a total theater person.
Well, for safety's sake, right? Just for safety's
Absolutely.
sake. You can do damage.
Yeah,
right?
You can do damage to yourself, the students, and the school. So, yeah, I mean, you must, it's a really good thing to remember for everyone going through college right now and universities, and especially if you ever have the opportunity to do summer stock. A lot of times as an actor, you would apply for a job, and if you don't have any experience in the technical areas, they may not hire you because a lot of actors and summer stock companies also do lighting. They do lighting. They do scenery. They may, work as carpenters. They can work as wardrobe. These are skills that are really important. So thank you, David, in Michigan, and we wish you the best of luck. And please don't burn down this school. Well, that Hammond organ solo tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guest interviews, and be sure to follow us on our Light Talk Facebook group. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and just about every other podcast site. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
And remember, if you choose to litigate, our great law firm of Fleck, Flock, Flair, and Glare and their paralegal snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and the Republic of Texas.
And be sure to tune in next week when we proudly chat with designer Ken Billington.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ken. Yeah. All that. And the new sponsor, Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
So long, everybody. Adios.